blow in the playoffs.
You know, in the words of the great Bob Cole, everything is happening. And that's exactly what is happening right now. It is officially trade season, and the trade deadline is still a few days away. I feel sorry for all those trade analysts that have to work those trade deadline shows in a couple of days, because I just hope for their sake that there's something left for them to talk about. At this point, there's going to be nothing left. The trades are coming in a flurry, and in large part, that's thanks to the Leafs' own Kyle Dubas. We're going to get to all of it today, Leafs talk, as well as deals that have happened across the league. I'm Joe Choffs with the boys, Coach Frank, and even Bobby Bottles has graced us with his presence. Good to see you as well, Bobby. Boys, how are we doing today?
What can you say? My head's still spinning. I was saying, I tweeted on a thing, I need a cigarette, and I've never even smoked before. That's so you're going to need to calm down. It's crazy, man, but it's exciting.
Over under on minutes you were on Twitter today. 90 minutes.
No. Over under how much work I got done today.
Oh, don't let your boss see that. Okay, we'll edit that part out.
Yeah.
All right, guys, so let's jump right into it. So this has seemed like one of the craziest deadlines that I can remember. And in large part, it is thanks to Kyle Dubas. He's done a ton of work. So let's just review some of the stuff that he's done. Obviously, he's kicked things off a couple weeks ago with the big O'Reilly and Achari deals with St. Louis. And then yesterday, he acquired Jake McCabe and Sam Lafferty and a few late round picks in 2025 for a first rounder in 2025, a second rounder in 2024, Joey Anderson and Pavel Gogolev, who you probably never heard of because he plays in the ECHL. And both of those players, McCabe and Lafferty, they have for, I believe McCabe they have for 2 more years, Lafferty they have for 1 more year, and McCabe is 50% retained on the cap. So they're only paying him $2.2 million. So let's break down that deal. When that deal happened, what was your impression with the deal? Did you like it or did you not like it?
Specifically the McCabe Lafferty deal?
Yeah.
I gotta be honest with you. I can't sit here and say I know a ton about either player. A lot's been made about McCabe being a solid top 4 defenseman, and I would say he's like a 4. You know, I just from what I've read, what I've seen, like he's not a top 2 guy, but he's a top 4 guy that I think is a replacement for Muzzin. I think he's Muzzin light, if you want to look at it.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off right there. Yeah. Muzzin is a top pairing guy. At least he played like it. And now you're replacing him with a top 4 guy, as you say. So are you really replacing Muzzin?
Muzzin of now? Absolutely. He didn't give you much. The guy was hurt a lot. Absolutely. Yep.
I'll admit as well, I've only seen a little bit of Jake McCabe play recently. One of the games I was not impressed with, the first game against the Leafs, and then the second game he looked a little bit better. But it just seems like a lot to give up. I know it's only picks and there's no roster players given in that deal, and you're getting him for much cheaper. He's not a rental. You're getting it for $2 million over the next couple of years, which is great. I love that part of the deal. But at this point, if you're going to trade more first-round picks, why not? I'd rather them add another first-round pick and go balls to the wall and add Jacob and try to trade for Jacob Chychrun at that point. I'm fumbling all over my words there for all those names. But
what we don't know, Joe, is the asking price from Arizona seems to be stuck on 2 firsts and a top prospect. Are you willing to give up Nyes? Because that's probably what they're asking for. Right?
Would you give up 2 firsts and Topi Niemela? Because they also want a young defenseman, I've heard. At that point, I might as well. We've already given.
But they're not asking for Niemela. That's the thing. If this thing would have been done if that was the case. It's Nyes or bust. And if I'm Arizona, listen. What's the guy's name? Bill Armstrong is probably a student of the Joe Sakic School of GMing. How long did Joe Sakic hold on to? What was the deal? Was it the Duchesne deal?
Yeah.
And he got a boatload back. He doesn't have to trade Chychrun. He still has him under contract. It's shitty that he's been sitting out. But when this guy came back, all he did was raise his stock. He's been back and he's been throwing up points and goals left, right, and center. So if that's the ask, that's the ask. And I'm not giving Nyes, not to this point. I think there's too much there. So, but I agree with you, Joe. If all things considered, Why not just pay up for Chikrin if it was Niemela or Hervinen or whatever? I get it. But what I like McCabe for is now is I like him at $2 million, not 4 and change as he was on Chicago. So now I look at him at a different type of player. You're getting more for the value at $2 million for the next 2 years plus this versus what he could have been at 2 years. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, you're paying for that, but it looks like right off the bat they're going to use him in a shutdown role. The Leafs have never had a shutdown pair. So I guess Brody and McCabe are going to be that first attempt at it. And they haven't even played yet. So we can't speculate on something we haven't seen. They're probably going to shuffle it around. But, hey, listen, Dubas said he's had his eye on him for a while. He actually even has UFA before he signed in Chicago. So obviously they have a plan for him.
You know I like analytics, so I dove into the analytics of Jake McCabe. And he's actually done well in tough minutes in Chicago. They had him playing against top competition. So he has some good metrics in terms of that. But again, we'll wait and see what it looks like. But I wasn't as thrilled with the deal at first as I know many of Leafs Twitter were when that deal happened. I do love the fact that they have him for 2 more years, though, that's for sure. And the Sam Lafferty, I liked his speed. And I think they need more of it in their bottom 6. And he's physical. So he definitely brings that another element. It looks like they're going to run him, Achari, and Kerfoot on that fourth line, which is 3 Tasmanian Devils minus Kerfoot. I don't know, but that could be an effective fourth line. A fourth line in which, if you're matching up against Tampa's fourth line, I don't know if Tampa's line. I don't know if you're John Cooper if you want to match up your fourth line with that fourth line because the speed. I don't think they can match it, to be honest.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a fair point. Joe, honestly, at this point, we can only go by what the practice lines were set up for today before all that craziness happened. But yeah, I would say that fourth line is probably what's been penciled in. I still think ideally Camp is a fourth line player, but I don't know, man. It's just there's still too many moving parts. It's hard to say. But I agree with you. Having more speed in your bottom 6 is definitely a necessity, and they've addressed it for sure.
Bobby, from an outsider's perspective, you are not the Leaf fan here. What would you say about that deal?
I'm with you guys. Do we know about those guys? Like I haven't watched Chicago.
It's just riveting analysis. Thank you.
Do you really? I think the one thing that has been clearly evident, and I don't want to speak too much into this until we go into a couple of the other trades, but there was a plan. There was definitely a plan that Dubas had, and I'll expand more on that when we get into a couple of the other trades that we talk about.
Let's get to some of the other trades. So the day started off with the Leafs dealing Rasmus Sandin to the Washington Capitals for Eric Gustafsson, who's actually put up some nice points this year mainly because John Carlson's been out. So he's had top power play minutes for them. And they also acquire a first-round pick back, which was, I believe it's Boston's first-round pick in 2023 that the Bruins gave up in the Orlov trade that they just made. So we kind of had the feeling that this might happen. In acquiring McCabe, it actually pushed Rasmus Sandin out of their top 6. And, before the year, he had the contract dispute, mainly because he was worried about his fit on the team. I'm sure this trade probably wouldn't have made him that happy. This trade didn't make me very happy. I didn't like this trade, and I still don't like it. Rasmus Sandin is a 22-year-old defenseman who's crushed third-pairing minutes. This year, when the Leafs had a lot of injuries to the defense, he played higher up in the lineup and did very well. I almost feel like there's an overreaction to that game that they played against Boston, in which him and Liljegren were crushed by the Bruins forecheck. It was like, oh, they can't handle it. And they didn't play well that game, but it was one game. It was a one-game sample. And I feel like this might be an overreaction to that. Here's what I don't understand. In the Achari deal, in the Achari O'Reilly deal, in the McCabe and Lafferty deal, you're trading away all these picks. Kyle Dubas is basically like, F them picks. We don't need them because we're in our window right now. We need players that can help us right now. Why are you then trading a 22-year-old really good defenseman for a pick that will not help you for 5 years? You you just drafted and developed Rasmus Sandin. You took 4 or 5 years to develop him into what he is right now. You're taking 5 steps back, essentially. Okay, yeah, you have a first-round pick. What do you do with that now? Do you think they could possibly acquire someone else with that first-round pick? And that's where I'm a little confused by that deal.
I think I like Sandin, always have. I was a proponent of him quarterbacking the power play. Obviously, Keith didn't see it like that. I can't really comment on this deal until Friday at 3 p.m. because I think that first round pick is in play. Still think it is. You've essentially added McCabe, but you've taken away a defenseman in Sandin and kind of weakened your depth or the amount of NHL defensemen you have. Like, yeah, there's 9D there right now, but like Sandin was obviously, should have been in that top 6. But I think looking at from 10,000 feet in the air, he's going to be okay. He's going to do well on Washington. I think him and Carlson, he'll compliment him well. But like with Riley signed long term, Sandin barely played on the second power play unit, doesn't penalty kill, wasn't seen as a shutdown guy. Like, kind of what was he going to do? He was going to just fade away on a third pairing next year. And a lot of that defense is set for next year as well. Like I said, McCabe's been brought in. He's got more term on his contract. And they didn't sign Timmins to sit on his ass either and be a 7th guy making $1.1 million either, right? So I just don't think – I think they wanted to get harder to play against. Sandin didn't provide that skill set. I'd love to sit here and say they have a role for Gustafsson, but I don't even think he's in the plans either. So I think he could be dealt for picks or packaged with whatever they're going to do with this first-round pick and send out. So, like – the jury's still out for me. It was a head scratcher. I think it's more of a deal you probably make in the summer because I thought really Sandin could have been the centerpiece of a Chychrun trade at one point. But
same here, yeah.
Are you a little surprised they got a first for him though? I kind of am. I got to be honest with you. I'm a little surprised they got a first plus for Sandin. So I think that's just good asset management. I really think he was worth a first at this point, Joe, because he hasn't really shown that growth this year. He's been a healthy scratched. He's been on the third pair. They got a first-round pick for him. So I think that's pretty shrewd business by Dubas.
In one way, it was almost like they capitalized early before he becomes like the next Travis Dermott, where his value completely goes down the tubes. But I fully believe in Rasmus's ability, and I think he's going to be a really good defenseman. I wish him all the luck in Washington. If you're a Caps fan, I'd be totally stoked that you got him because I think he's going to be solid. So.
See,
if I told you 3 years ago, Patrick Kane and Rasmus Sandin are going to get traded and Rasmus Sandin was going to get more, what would you have said to me?
I'd say you're drunk.
How about if you put both returns?
Stop drinking, I'd say.
How about this one? How about if you put both guys together and still wouldn't get as much as what Tanner Jeannot got? How about that one?
That's
Well, we're going to get to that trade.
Oh, I know we are. Joel, the last thing on that is that, I look at this now to say, Dubas now, if he stays with his first round pick, he has a first round pick to use. It's not a bad thing. Or he has a first round pick to flip for another asset up front, which I think they're going to do. Like, to me, it's a win-win here. Like, I think you hit it bang on. You don't take a guy and develop him for 5 years and then take a pick for the next 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense. And you don't have 9 NHL D-men on your roster. So, like, something's got to give here. And I really think, and not for anything, Dubas didn't even do a presser today. Usually you do a presser when you're done, right?
That is a good point.
Any questions on Gustafsson, but took questions on Keith. So, like,
I would go 95% the Leafs do not use that pick. That's what I'm going to say. That's how I would address it.
Maybe
95%.
So they keep the first?
I'm saying they will not make that pick. 95%.
Yes. Agreed.
Right? 5% chance maybe they don't move it, but 95% chance they're not using that draft pick.
Hey, listen,
not at the draft.
you don't come this far and just this is like poker, man. It's like you don't keep going in right to the last just to see the river. I'm like, oh, geez, I'm out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't know if they're going to keep Gustafsson. I'm with you, Frank. I think Gustafsson first, and maybe they package something else. And I think that's kind of their next move.
But apparently, Rob, I've been reading this guy has more value than we think. And I think you made the point that he's had all these points because Carlson's been out on Washington, and this guy's been moving the power play. Maybe he's a specialist, but I don't see him in this top 6, to be quite honest.
He's not. There's no way he is. No
so,
way.
like, either they're going to run 7D, and he's going to be the Mark, what was that guy's name? Played for Tampa. Not Bergeron. Defenseman, big shot. Marc-Andre Bergeron, something like that.
I remember that guy. Yeah.
Okay, remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
All he did was power play. Had a bomb of a shot. All he did was the power play. Can you see the Leafs going 11 forwards and 7D during the game?
God, I hope not.
You know what
just using him on the power play? Can you imagine?
It just doesn't make sense. Maybe Hall and him go. There's a lot of questions here, but I think he has value. I think he can be value to somebody who actually can fit him in the top 6 to run a couple power play units. So, and I'm not saying value as a first, second round, but they could recoup a 4th and a 6th. Who knows?
Speaking of which, the 9 defensemen, they did add another defenseman. They brought back Luke Schenn today from the Vancouver Canucks. They traded away a 3rd-round pick in 2023, but they also acquired a 2024 3rd-rounder from the Islanders when they sent Pierre Engvall, or shall we say perimeter Engvall, to the Islanders. I had no problem with that trade, even though I think a little bit more highly of Engvall than most, especially when you look at like his ability to play with David Kampf. Kampf's minutes with Engvall and without, the splits with and without, are like he plays much better when Engvall's with him, when he's able to transport the puck up the ice. But it is what it is. They had to clear money, so I'm okay with that pick. Bringing Luke Schenn back, I mean, I like the physicalness that he brings. It's obvious. Bobby mentioned before that the Leafs had a plan going into this. The plan is being harder to play against, and Schenn is harder to play against. But where does he fit in this lineup? Is he playing ahead of Justin Hall, or are they moving Hall?
Absolutely, Joe. You don't make a trade and have a guy sit.
They just acquired Gustafsson, and we said they're going to sit. They're going to sit him.
No, we said he's probably not staying. Listen, one thing that I was actually surprised to learn tonight: Luke Schenn leads the NHL in hits. Who on that blue line, other than McCabe before Schenn was acquired, was going to throw hits or finish checks against the Tampa Bay Lightning? You're probably just asking McCabe. Maybe Gio?
Gio, for sure, yeah.
Maybe. Now you got Gio, McCabe, and Schenn. Now, Schenn's a fighter. There's a guy who can now stand up on the back end. You don't have to have somebody play, or you didn't have to insert Simmons or Clifford into the lineup. You now have a guy who can do that. And he'll be on the ice when Matthews is on the ice. He'll be on the ice most likely if Nylander or Tavares on the ice. That's where Schenn is valuable in the lineup. My only concern is if Riley still plays 20-plus minutes a night, Schen's going to be playing 20-plus minutes a night. That's a bit of a concern.
Can't happen, no.
So I think he's just keep going in the blender when he needs to move Brody over in certain situations and offensive zones and that type of thing. But I think Schen's your policeman. That's the role I see. And Justin Hall can't do that.
Schenn also takes a lot of penalties. So I don't know if you want to do that against the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Did anybody else get Joe, you might like this reference, but did you get the Moneyball vibe when they traded Engvall? Like, did you remember when Billy Beane wanted them to play that lineup and he just kept throwing Carlos Pena out there and he's like, I traded him, so you can't play him anymore? Yeah. I kind of thought of that where it's like, okay, now you can't play Engvall anymore. So now you got to do something else.
I'm taking your toys away.
There are a bunch of guys on Twitter absolutely pissed to the nines that Engvall is gone. What am I missing here, guys?
I don't know why.
What am I missing? Now, I'm talking to the analytics darling here, but all I know is that the last 3 playoff series, Pierre Engvall's been on vacation.
I agree with
mind,
that. Yep.
Body, and spirit. Guy is 6'5". Yeah, exactly.
Not body. The body's been here, unfortunately, for you guys.
6'5", who played like he was 5'6". And you know what, Joe? I said this today when I was on with Mike Richards. The demise of the Leafs the last 3 years has not been the top six, has not been goaltending. They have got next to nothing from their bottom six forwards. And that goes to Engvall, that goes to Kerfoot, that goes to McKayev when he was here, Kemp, the list goes on and on and on. Enough is enough with these guys. Engvall was not going to turn into Tom Wilson. He is what he is. I have no clue what the Islanders are going to do with him, but that was even funnier, that he actually fetched a third-round pick. But it needs a different look. And you said it, Rob said it too. If you're going to get harder to play against, when I think harder to play against, I don't think Pierre Engvall. No. He just didn't fit. I, for one, am glad, and I was going to put my name into the Uber thing to maybe drive him to the airport. You know, that's how excited I was. I would have volunteered to drive him, but until I figured out he was in Seattle, well, that wasn't going to happen. So.
It was a complete addition by subtraction for me.
Absolutely.
That's the way I feel. And I finally got to the Schenn deal, which really, it's like all the puzzle pieces fell together. You look at Tampa's third and fourth line, Nick Paul, Pierre Bellemare, Corey Perry, Maroon, Colton. Like, these are tough guys to play against. I guarantee you they looked at Sandin and said, we can't have him playing against any of these guys. We just can't. And knowing that they're going to play these guys in the playoffs, it looks like they're gearing up to be a little bit harder to play against. Ryan O'Reilly, which I really like that pickup. Luke Schenn, who is not going to wow you, but he's big, he's strong. Like Frank said, he can fight, he can hold his own. I mean, if they're not going to be able to, push the Leafs around as much with him around. So this was clear to me. Now they do need to add one more defenseman because Justin Hall cannot play either. And I think once they add that defenseman, I don't know where else they're going to go from that. I think that's kind of.
So you think they should add another defenseman? They already have 9. You think they should add another one?
But like Frank said, like you can have 9, but how many of them are actual NHL defensemen?
But that's what my argument was. That like you might as well, if you're not getting a top pairing guy and you have a bunch of second pairing guys and third pairing guys, what's the point in acquiring another second pairing guy? And third pairing guy.
Because Luke Schenn, like Frank just said, Luke Schenn is a physical guy against 6 horses. They've got 6 moose in their bottom 6. I don't know how is Sandin gonna line up against those 6 guys. Yeah. So unless Sandin's playing against the top 2 lines, he just didn't fit. Sandin's a much better defenseman than Luke Schenn at this point. But doesn't Luke Schenn make a little bit more sense for the Leafs at this point?
You have a lot of the same player in the defense.
And I think one more D. I think that's the lot that first round pick is going to be used to get one more D. That's what, in my opinion. If not, then you got to basically have 12 minutes of praying when Justin Hall's out there for you guys. So
I think they're going forward hunting.
I hope so. I want another.
I don't think you're looking now at a third line of Kerfoot. Sorry, what was I looking at today? It was
Kampf or Yarncroc.
No, it was Kerf. Sorry, it was Kampf, Lafferty, and Kerfoot, and Aston Reese, Achari, and Lafferty. I'm sorry. Kerfoot, Kampf, and Yarncroc, Aston Reese, Achari, and Lafferty, which is okay.
It's fine.
But
fine.
Who's scoring there?
It's okay. Just
fine.
okay.
It's okay. So I think
it looked better when Engvall was in there. I'm not gonna lie.
So really? I don't think so. What I think is gonna happen, Joe, is I honestly think Dubas, you know what? I actually forgot that they have the 24 first round pick available as well. So it's next year's and the year following. You have 23 and 24 available. Not only that, Joe, if and when, or if they decide to take Murray off LTIR, they still have $3 million in cap space to use, believe it or not. So
that can't be right.
I'm pretty sure that's what I read. I'm going to find it right now. But they made enough moves today to acquire more cap space. If that's the case, Joe, that's a forward, which bumps everybody back down.
Yeah, I would like them to get another winger and then possibly move O'Reilly to third line center, and then you really have an advantage through the center of the ice position. That would be ideal, I think.
Now I'm gonna end this on my end with one thing. I put in the universe. I'm gonna say it here so everybody hears it. Pick up the phone. you call Brian McClellan, the GM of the Washington Capitals, and say, what is the price for Tom Wilson? Tell me what it is. Here it is. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Don't you think that conversation would have happened in the Rasmus Sandin deal?
Ask him again.
I would love Tommy Wilson. Yeah, absolutely. If he's healthy.
That's the guy.
He's been hurt all year.
If not, then we've talked about guys. Tyler Bertuzzi would be a nice fit. Detroit lost again tonight to Ottawa, so they're pretty looking. Look, Joe, there are some teams who haven't sold yet. Anaheim hasn't sold yet. Flyers haven't sold yet. The Coyotes really haven't even sold a lot yet. Max Domi's still out there. He's a guy I'd like. There's a nice fit. There's somebody coming here. It has to be.
All right, then. So we agree. There's got to be another shoe to drop then. All right, so we kind of wrapped up the Leafs, and hopefully there's more stuff to come before Friday's deadline. But there was a flurry of other deals, so let's go through them right now. Obviously, the biggest one is Showtime goes to Broadway. Patrick Kane going to the New York Rangers for a conditional 2nd and 4th round pick. If you're surprised by the return that Chicago got, I mean, they had no leverage. Basically, Kane told them where he was willing to go, and it was one place. And Chicago had the option of saying, well, you're either going to just stay here because we'd rather not trade you for that, or we're going to do good by you, who is an icon in our franchise, and we'll let you go where you need to go. And New York Rangers took advantage of that. Give them credit. Now, the condition on the 2nd round pick is that I believe if the Rangers make it to the conference final, it turns into a 1st round pick in 2024. So there's a good chance of that happening. The Rangers are pretty much loaded at forward. So what were your thoughts on Patrick Kane? It was probably the worst kept secret that he was going there. He gets his wish.
Well, this is what happens when you give a guy a no move clause, a full no move clause. He says, listen, there's only one team there's only one team I want to go to. He was never coming to Toronto. He wasn't going to Dallas. He wasn't going to Carolina or Vegas. There was one team he wanted to go to, and Chicago had to extract as much as possible. And the fact that they got a 2nd and a 4th, I'm actually surprised it was that much, to be honest. I thought it was going to be like a 2nd and like a B-level prospect or something, or like to that extent. But he got his wish. Now they moved Kravtsov to Vancouver as a move. There's another 1st round pick. These guys can't draft and develop. The one thing the Rangers cannot do
forwards. Defense, no problem. Forwards.
So now
and goalies, yeah.
But I don't know, man. It's another guy they got rid of to accommodate it. So if this blows up in their face, I think it's more of a failure for the Rangers than it is for the Leafs, to be quite honest with you.
The Blackhawks really dropped the ball on this. I think they could have gotten I think reports were 1st round pick last year, or just they could have got the world last year, and they just held on too long. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know what they were doing. The Rangers, I think, become, even though Patrick Kane has not had the greatest year by Patrick Kane standards, haven't they become more dangerous just with the guy between the pipes? I mean, you're looking at, they've got guys now that can score, and they might only have to score 2 goals a game now to win some of these playoff games. So I think they, nice move for them. Obviously, a 2nd and a 4th is not that much to give up. Conditional 2nd. This was this is a really low risk move for me. If you're the Rangers.
Thing about the Rangers, they're going to play the Devils in the 1st round, which, other than the Leafs Lightning, that might be the best series going, because the Devils are a really good team, and they just acquired Timo Meier, which was a huge deal. The Devils are a really good team. I think the Devils could take them, except for the fact New York has a heavy advantage in net with Shesterkin.
I don't even know who's playing goalie for the Devils in that series, to be honest with you. Is it Vanacek,
Yeah.
I guess?
I believe it is. So that's the biggest advantage that the Rangers have. But it would be something if the Devils were to be able to pull off that upset. And the Devils, as it stands right now, would have home ice advantage in that series. So,
Hey, listen, Joe, let's not kid ourselves. If we want to, when we start looking at the Leafs and Lightning, there's one main advantage, and we all know where it is.
exactly.
So, and that can win you a series.
Very true. The Leafs could do all of this, and it could be all done, all for naught, if Vasilevsky goes full Vasilevsky mode. right?
And we've seen it.
Another big deal today, big news for Oilers country, is they finally get a shutdown defenseman. Matthias Ekholm goes from the Predators to the Oilers for Tyson Barrie, a first-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and there were a couple other things involved in that deal. Do you like this deal for the Oilers? I really like it. I mean,
absolutely.
Barry's had a pretty good year, but a lot of his points are obviously because he gets to play on that amazing power play. It'll be interesting to see who they fill in that spot. I think it might be Evan Bouchard, I've heard, or Broberg. Frankie, did you hear something like that?
Probably the guy they go with. Maybe even Nurse. Who knows?
Yeah, possibly. So, but Ekholm, he's 33 or 32. He's got 4 years left on his deal still. And I think the Predators ate 4% of his contract, which is it's very weird. But I think he's got a lot of game left. I think he's a really good defenseman, and he'll fit in well there.
He's a guy who actually I thought the Leafs were going to try to pry out a national.
I would have liked him over McCabe, but I get the resistance to having him for 4 more years. And if Nashville wasn't willing to eat more than 4% of that contract, then I understand not getting.
And let's not forget, Edmonton also lost Puljujarvi, who probably wasn't doing a lot for him, but there's a guy that some teams can take a swing and try to get something going there.
Well, Carolina did.
Lost for them too, right? Exactly, and who he played well with Aho with. At the World Juniors, they dominated.
That's right.
Right? So that was a smart pickup by Carolina. It didn't cost them much. But Edmonton should not be done. Like, you got the best player in the world, according to Rob, the best 2 players in the world. But you got the best player in the world. Like, you should be doing what Dubas is doing. And they're not. Like, Ekholm will be a decent stopgap, but that team is all smoke and mirrors, man. But the West is so wide open.
That's why they should go balls to the wall.
Exactly.
All right. Another big deal dealing with the Leafs division. Tanner Jeannot gets traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning for a first, a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, just basically a boatload of picks. And after the initial reaction of being wowed by the return that the Predators got, I will say I love Tanner Jeannot. I think this is an amazing pickup for the Lightning. They have him. He's a 22, 23-year-old. He was 6th in Calder voting last year. He's had an off year by his standards. His shooting percentage is way low. And if people use that as an excuse, like, well, why'd you pick him up? He's not having a good year. The only reason they were able to get him was because he wasn't having a good year. Because if he had put up a year like he had last year, there's no way the Predators are giving him up. So credit to Tampa Bay. They're such a smartly run franchise that obviously there was a bidding war for this player, and they were willing to put all their chips in for him. And he's going to be on that team probably for 5 to 10 years at a low cap hit, and he'll give us nightmares and probably will this upcoming series. That's my analysis. What's yours?
I'm not saying anything bad about Julien Brisebois because I don't want to put any negativity into
you don't want the karma, yeah.
But I look at Tampa Bay's defense and I'm like, okay.
That's their weakness, right? Yeah.
Sure. Okay, no problem.
Let's watch Brisebois pull a rabbit out of his hat and pick up a defense.
I don't know. He said today, I was watching the game in the intermission when I got home. He came out and said on TV, yeah, we're probably done. I don't think so. I don't
believe him.
Unless Hedman plays 55 minutes. Yeah.
You know what, Anchorman, when he's like, I don't believe you. That's what it's like. Yeah. And Boston made a big deal earlier in the week. They got Dmitry Orlov and Garnet Hathaway from the Caps in exchange for a first and a second round pick, which the Caps already dealt to Toronto for the Rasmus Sandin deal. Really like this deal for the Bruins. The Bruins didn't have any holes, and now they really don't have any holes. Their defense gets even stronger. Hathaway is a real prick to play against, so they get, even tougher to play against. And they traded away Craig Smith in that deal, who is not one of those players. I think he's a good player, but he's not really difficult to play against per se. So the Bruins get better, the Lightning get better. It goes to show, do you think that had an effect on the Leafs moves, or do you think the Leafs were always going to go all in, especially with Kyle Dubas' contract status going into this year?
I think it affected a little bit. He can say it doesn't, but what everyone else is doing, who they're bringing in, and you got to look at your team. And listen, they know that third line was going to go up against Tampa's third line, and with again Jeannot's playing on that one, but like he knew that wasn't going to do it. And I said it, they were going to tear that third line apart. And I think a bit of it was reactionary, to be quite honest with you. The Sandin one for me came out of absolutely nowhere. I think nobody saw that one coming. But I think the move to get the McCabe and Lafferty was a was a direct relation to the Jeannot deal, I think, anyways.
All right. So with all the moves that Kyle Dubas has done, and you can agree with them or disagree with them, I like some of them. I don't like some of them, as I've said on the show. Do you think it's possible, if the Leafs lose in the first round series, that he's able to convince Shanahan, the board, to say, look, we didn't get the results again, but I did a lot of work. I basically gave these guys everything they needed to succeed, and they let me down. So my body of work should stand that I should be able to keep my job and be given a contract extension anyways. Do you think that is at all possible?
I think he's done enough to warrant a contract extension. I think he's done enough where he can say, I'm not playing now. You guys are the one putting the equipment on. So it's up to you guys to figure it out. Like, I've given you, if anything, this is something to the core four. Like, you guys have brought us here. I've got you support. My microscope's on Keefe. It's up to him now, man. He's got to find the right combos. He's got to find the right match. He's got 20 games to figure this out, to figure who plays well where, how many minutes to allocate here and there, who plays on the power play, penalty kill. It's almost like training camp. They've made enough moves where it's almost like a team coming out of training camp.
And it scares me a little bit. Yeah.
It does scare you a bit, but like, look at also the character you're bringing into this dressing room. It's a different dynamic. This is not a speed kills type of team anymore. They're a possession-based team, but now they're trying to be pricks to play against. And if this doesn't work out to the way we hope it does, I think it's Keefe's ass, not Dubas. But then again, Joe, if you're Dubas, why would you stay?
That is a good question also. Almost like the Alex Anthopoulos situation, right?
Right? Why would you stay, man? You're telling me that teams wouldn't be beating down the door?
Oh, they will be. And in true Leaf fashion, he will then lead that team to a Stanley Cup.
I would like to go with...
You could totally write the script right now. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I would like to go with possible, like walks in the boardroom, possible, not probable. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
If they lose again, like, this is just outrageous. The last thing I'd have on all this was the timing was a little like the timing was a little odd that they made all these moves now. Like, I'm surprised this wasn't done, forget like at the beginning of the season, like a year ago. I figured after the Montreal loss, they would kind of go this route of kind of picking up that grip, but interesting time. I guess they're still giving Keefe some time to play with his lineup for the next 20 games, for these next 20 exhibition games they have until playoffs start.
All right, last question I have for you guys. The East is a death gauntlet. Okay. Whatever team that comes out of the East is going to have to go through a war. What are the chances that the team that comes out of the East is going to be so beat up by the time they get to the final that that'll be a Western Conference team that wins it all in the end?
Wow.
Colorado's looking good again.
I don't buy into that.
All right, Bobby. So you think an Eastern Conference team is winning this year, is what you're saying?
I'm not going to blame it on the gauntlet of having to go through the East. I think that kind of stuff makes you tougher. I mean, look at all those years that the Western Conference was so good and they still won the Cup. I'm not going to go with that. There's I like a lot of the teams in the East, and out West, I mean, there's not much out there.
It's wide open. I think Colorado is just turning around at the right time. They might be the team to beat again in the West.
If Kale's
that goalie.
And Makar, if Makar's right there, I don't know if they're the same team,
true.
But I think an Eastern team is going to win because I like 4 or 5 of them, but I'm not going to say that it's they're going to be. This is not 1980s anymore. This is a different era. So
All right. I think that's all I have. You guys have any questions for anything else you want to discuss before we get on out of here?
I think we're tapped out, man, because I think there's more coming. We got to conserve our energy.
That's true. We might have to put another show up right after the Leafs acquire their next forward, which we all believe is going to happen. And if they don't, total letdown. I'm going to be very upset.
In classic post salary cap era, I have a feeling that this trade deadline is going to stink as usual, as they all have since 2004.
Well, hold on a second.
No,
That's
No,
not a
he's right, Frankie. They all suck.
04 was the
When
last
we were in
Wait a
high
minute,
school,
wait a
Frankie,
minute.
Bobby
You're
and I
talking
would take
about
the
the
day
day?
off.
You're talking about the day? Because the week leading up to it's been fantastic.
We're talking about the day.
Oh,
what
the
the
day's
trade
gonna
deadline
suck.
shows.
It's going to be the Jonas Corpusalo sweepstakes.
But that's what I mean. Like when we were in high school, we used to take the day off school so that we could just sit in front of a TV and watch all the deals come in on that day.
Yes.
Where will Mike Sillinger go? Was always
Yeah, because he got traded
deadline.
every
The
trade deadline. It's
suitcase,
true.
Mike Sillinger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
hold
wish
on.
I wish they got rid of the salary cap for like the last half of the season.
I wish they got rid of the salary cap for eternity. It's the worst thing in sports. It sucks. But
Okay,
we'll talk about that another show.
So let's do this then. Let's have a little bit of fun. Let's end off on this. There's still names on the board. Let's take a guess. Let's see how accurate we are. I'll throw out a couple names. You guys tell me where you think they might end up, just for fun. Because who knows? By the time this gets out, they might be traded anyways. Jacob Chikrin. Is he dealt before the deadline? Where?
No, at this point, he's sticking around for another year in the desert.
Agreed.
I'm saying he gets dealt, but I'm saying he gets dealt to a team like, you know what, David? Oh, sorry, guys. I'd say a team that hasn't done much, but I think needs to make a splash. I'm going to go off the board. I'm saying Carolina picks up Chikrin.
So the team with already an amazing defense core gets Chikrin also. Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. Great.
Yep. Tyler Bertuzzi.
I think he could be a guy that the Leafs target. They've liked him in the past, so I'll say the Leafs.
Okay, Bobby.
Why not?
I'm not sure he's going to get traded, so I'll go.
Bobby's definitely not watching TSN on Friday. Here's one for you, Robbie. Brock Besser.
Minnesota.
Please move him anywhere. Move him anywhere, please.
Okay, I'll say the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Ooh, he's got a Penguin vibe.
Let's do one or two more. Let's do Max Domi.
I think he stays in Chicago.
I say that's the guy. I say that's probably the guy the Leafs grab.
I would really like if the Leafs got him. That would be a cool pickup.
I
Getting
agree.
McCabe and Domi for the playoff run. Gotta love it.
And he's having a sneaky good year, Domi. Like sneaky, really good.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the only names that jump out at me in terms of actually like wanting to watch on Friday, because everything else, man, looks pretty bleak. So
is Tyler Myers almost able to be traded? Is his contract almost done?
I have it on this list, Rob. So here's a name for you, Joe. This one got me a little curious because I thought maybe he was going to be the guy, but the guy who's had a down year, making a lot of money, John Klingberg, Anaheim.
Don't like him. I think he's an offensive liability, and his offense is not what it used to be. He's going to get traded because Anaheim signed him for the purpose of trading him at the deadline, but I don't think they're going to get much for him. I don't even know who's going to get him, and I don't care who's going to get him.
So here's a last question for you guys. Is there a player that nobody's talking about that you think could be dealt out of the blue?
I'd like to see Konechny moved out of Philly. You haven't heard anything about him being moved. I've heard a lot about Van Riem's likely being moved, but Konechny, I haven't heard a thing. I think he'd be a great addition for a playoff team.
I'd love to say JT Miller, but that's not.
There are rumors that the Penguins are interested.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah,
I'm staying in Vancouver. I think Demko gets dealt.
Oh God, why you got to say that?
I think Demko gets dealt. And here's another name I'll throw at you. UC Soros.
No
There's
chance.
another name. Okay.
Not yet. They do have Askarov.
I'm just going off the board here.
Why
Go
would
off
you
the
ruin?
bed.
Why
That's
would
what
you
should do.
ruin?
Go off the bed.
Why would you ruin my week with Demko? Why?
All right, guys.
Demko in a Leaf jersey. Sorry, Rob.
Oh my God.
On that note, I'm ready to go to bed. So make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button. Drop a line below. Tell us what you think. Maybe you have an idea of where some of these players are going to end up. Hopefully, we're able to make another show because the Leafs have made another big deal. And Frankie, I want to thank you in advance. We were supposed to do this show yesterday, but you fell asleep. And thank God you did, because we wouldn't have been able to, we would have had to refilm it all, because with all these deals today, it would have been useless to post that one yesterday. So thank you so much, Frankie.
My pleasure. My pleasure. You thank my daughter for that one.
Yeah, perfect. All right, guys, take care. Thanks for tuning in. Ciao.